think you know Adolf Hitler. You've never seen him like this before. Hitler's contemporaries, from his birth in Braunau to his death in the bunker, authentically flesh out the picture. Who was Hitler? Hitler neither finished school nor had any vocational training. He occasionally lived in homeless shelters or on the street. He refused to pursue a regular job. To this day, it seems inexplicable that he could come to power. Out of nowhere, Hitler became the Führer, leader of the German Reich, one of the most powerful men of the 20th century, starting an inferno that engulfed the world and brought death to millions of people. The nation worshipped him and followed him blindly into the abyss. But during his lifetime, he kept his origins and his life secret. No one should know how or who he was. Fascinating and oppressive accounts from companions, friends, and enemies, as well as the most extensive collection of archive material ever shown. Much of it, hitherto unpublished, reveal who Hitler was and how he could become what he was. A notorious liar and an unscrupulous murderer. Hitler breaks the pact with Stalin and invades Russia. His aim is to eradicate the entire Russian people and use the territory as a settlement region for the Aryan race. The German army quickly conquers large parts of Russia and besieges Moscow. Hitler has reached the pinnacle of German military power. Almost the entire European continent is under his control. His generals are concerned, but unconditionally obedient. After these rapid successes, the German army is faced with the unlimited manpower of the Red Army and, above all, with the incredible distances and harsh winter in Russia. After the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor and the subsequent US declaration of war on Japan, Hitler declares war on the USA. Will Hitler recognize that there is a growing imbalance of military power and act accordingly?
Up until 1942, he needed particular decorum and big rooms to think about important diplomatic activities or to plan offensives. Christa Schröder, Hitler's private secretary.
In the living hall of the Berghof, there was a large globe. An army adjutant pointed meaningfully to a pencil line running from north to south in the Urals. Hitler had drawn the line to identify the future boundary of the spheres of influence that were agreed with the Japanese. Albert Speer, Memoirs.
Letter to US President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Describing Hitler and Germany, Mr. Stalin spoke that the Germans were a people who, without a second's thought, would sign a treaty today, break it tomorrow, and sign a second one the following day. Harry Hopkins, Moscow.
Hans Halder, Major General, War Diary. Devastating verdict on Bolshevism. Is equal to antisocial criminality. Communism, tremendous danger for the future. We must distance ourselves from the attitude of soldierly camaraderie. The communist is no comrade beforehand and no comrade afterwards. It is a battle of extermination. Eradication of communist intelligence.
I had a belief in the foresight and wisdom of the German General Staff that was hard to shake. And I could not credit that these strategically and tactically trained minds would embark on a two-front war if they thought they were not sure that the Blitzkrieg technique would lead to victory. I thought it likely that it would lead to the end of Russia, as it had come to the end of France. I was wrong. Karl Zuckmayer, German-Austrian dramatist in British exile.
Diary, Monday, June the 9th, 1941. There's a big operation here. The streets are full of military of every kind on their way to the border. Henrietta Schneider, Elk, East Prussia.
When he decided on the Eastern Campaign in the summer of 1941, he told Eva Braun he had to travel to Berlin for a few days. Christa Schröder.
When Adolf heard the music of Wagner, he was transformed. Then he lost his fierceness. He became quiet, flexible, manageable. The unease disappeared from his face. What had moved him during the day vanished. August Kubitschek, childhood friend.
Wagner's music became second nature to him. Ernst Hamstein, until 1937, head of the NSDAP Foreign Press Bureau.
He loved the Wagner opera the most. Other than that, symphonies by Beethoven and Bruckner, or songs by Richard Strauss. Of the light entertainment pieces, he appreciated The Bat and The Merry Widow. Bormann proved his musical knowledge just by changing the records. Heinrich Hoffmann, photographer.
Für mein Maul Eseltier.
It was almost always the same repertoire that Hitler had them play. The only popular song Hitler allowed was the Donkey Serenade, which often concluded the concert. Gertraud Traudl-Junge, Hitler's private secretary.
In the near future, it'll be the victory fanfare for our Russian campaign. How do you like it? Adolf Hitler to Albert Speer after listening to the first part of the Prelude by Frank Smith. The Russian fanfare, June 21st, 1941.
Diary, Saturday, June the 21st, 1941. Wild rumors are coming from the border. Henrietta Schneider.
On the evening of June the 21st, the chief of staff of the Kiev military district called and said that a German sergeant had defected to the border guards. He claimed the German troops were moving into their staging areas for an attack that would begin early on June the 22nd. I notified Stalin immediately. Georgy Zhukov, Chief of Staff of the Red Army.
It's always a strange feeling before battle. The mood is like at a party. Horst Rochow, Kassel, regimental doctor in the 24th Tank Regiment of the 24th Tank Division.
War Diary of the Army Group North, June the 22nd, 1941. Beginning of the invasion, 3:05 a.m. The entire front of the Army Group crossed the border. Robert Freiherr von Griesenbeck, Major.
It was June the 22nd, 1941. The night was wonderfully warm and full of the scent of flowers. The nightingales sang like never before. Then it struck 1, 2, 3 o'clock, and it remained deadly quiet. In the next few seconds, artillery fire erupted and the earth threatened to explode. Anita von Goldammer, Mochyshkiai, Memel District.
Around 4:10 a.m., the West and Baltic military districts announced the beginning of the German offensive in their territory. Around 4:30 a.m., all members of the Politburo had assembled. Stalin looked pale at the table, pipe in hand. I suggested that all military districts on the border immediately employ all means against the enemy troops that had broken through and stop their continued advance. Not stop them, destroy them, Timoshenko stated more precisely. Give the order, Stalin said. Georgy Zhukov.
Is he mad, this Hitler? He could have allied himself with England's Chamberlain against communist Russia, or with communist Russia against the Anglo-Saxon capitalist world. But he invaded both. Yes, he is mad. Thank God. Klaus Mann, son of Katja and Thomas Mann, A Life's Report. Hitler sends us to Russia to conquer subhumans. But now I see Russia the way it is. The endless expanses, gently rising hills, occasionally a village with always the same one-story farmhouses. Then the only building made of stone, a church with a classical tower to one side. The land of farmers, the land of monks. Otto Eicher, soldier.
With endless grain and wheat fields and giant sunflower forests as a backdrop, I now experience the war in the precision of its metallic order, in the steel lights of its machinery, in the unceasing uniform roar of 1,000 engines. Gurzio Malaparte, author and war correspondent of the Italian newspaper Corriere della Sera, the Volga rises in Europe.
With the exception of Falsenest in the Eifel region, Hitler's headquarters all had names that appeared with the word Wolf, Wolf Schanzer, Werwolf, Wolf Schlucht. Heinrich Hoffmann.
Christa Schröder. It all began so promisingly. In the first 2 days in the Wolfschanze, we experienced the boss standing in front of a large map of Europe and pointing to Moscow, saying,
"In a few weeks we'll be in Moscow, there's no doubt about that. And then I'll raise Moscow to the ground. I'll build a reservoir there. The name Moscow has to be erased completely."
Adolf Hitler, quoted by Secretary Christa Schröder.
Type of warfare completely different from the German plan. Right from the beginning, with the absence of solid fronts and secured flanks. At first unpleasant for the army, today it has solid flanks. War, but without structure. Führer says you have to read Karl May to get inside him. No more information about our own and Russian strengths. Everything uncertain. Security of the Führer by no means absolute. Admits he's been terrified at times, but always strong when the going gets tough. Walter Scherf, Captain, Führer's Commissioner for Military Historiography.
The Request concert, broadcast every Sunday afternoon on the radio, was popular with young and old. When Wilhelm Strins, with his wonderful voice, sang Homeland Your Stars, you could have heard a pin drop. Eleonora V., born 1924, restaurant owner.
Wilhelm Keitel, Chief of the Armed Forces High Command, to Field Marshal Fedor von Bock on July the 25th, 1941. The speedy collapse of Russia is vital for German interests, since Russia cannot be subjugated. The Führer was concerned about this situation and asked, worriedly,
"How much time do I have left to finish off Russia? And how much time do I still need?"
August the 28th, 1941. Meeting of Mussolini and Hitler at the front near Uman, south of Kiev.
Russia, Army Group South, letter 1941. It is our war, not as the enemy propaganda likes to call it, Hitler's war. They don't know that Hitler's one of us, a soldier like us. We know that he would do everything in his power for us. That gives us unlimited trust. The Führer leaves no comrade in the lurch, and when he doesn't help, it's because there was something more important. Horst Rochow, regimental doctor from Kassel.
When Mussolini visited the Russian front, he was really impressed by the contact between the German officers and their soldiers. Hitler and he ate together with simple soldiers, and they had the same food. Rachele Mussolini, Memoirs.
Recording of the leave-taking from Hitler of the Italian ambassador Bernardo Attolico and his wife. The Führer replied that he had always advocated German-Italian friendship. Besides, there was also a personal element to this. In Mussolini, he treasured a great contemporary to whom he was bound through a deep personal affection. Should anything happen to Mussolini, then the Führer would feel really isolated.
Pichenko, September 1941. Ever onwards, deep into the Russian continent. To the Bug, the Dnieper, the Donetsk, the Don, the Volga, to the Caspian Sea. And then winter will come, the lovely winter, and then dust and rain again, dust and mud, until winter comes again, the lovely winter of Holy Russia. Curcio Malaparte, the Volga rises in Europe.
Diary, September the 9th, 1941. In the evening Führer's table. Führer, we Germans like only Finland, possibly Sweden, and of course England. A German-English alliance would be an alliance from people to people. The English just have to keep their hands off the continent. Their empire in the world they can keep. Walter Havel, Ambassador and SS Oberführer, representative of the Foreign Office with the Führer.
I say this here today because I can say it today. This enemy is already crushed and will never rise again.
Adolf Hitler, speech on the occasion of the opening of the War Winter Relief Drive on October the 3rd, 1941.
At the front, which was then near Smolensk, I made the acquaintance of what the Russians call General Mud. We travelled to the front through deep, tenacious mud, which reminded me of maple syrup turned to glue. We drove through battlefields that looked like the end of the world. Margaret Burke White, documentary photographer of Life magazine.
Diary, October the 10th, 1941, 11:30 p.m. It's snowing in Russia now, something we can't deal with well. Eduard Wagner, Artillery General.
There is a winter, you know, in Russia. For a good many months, the temperature is apt to fall very low. There is snow, there is frost, and all that. Hitler forgot about this Russian winter. He must have been very loosely educated. We all heard about it at school, but he forgot it. Winston Churchill.
Near the undamaged village, a dozen white crosses of acacia wood stand at the roadside. I stop to decipher the names of the fallen soldiers. All young men between 20 and 25. Curzio Malaparte, Shantabani in Bessarabia.
Diary, Sunday, November the 23rd, 1941. Partly cloudy, still mild. Morning, church, commemoration of the dead. Text, I am the resurrection and the life. More heavy fighting in Libya. Otto Blumenthal, Jewish-German mathematician, Utrecht.
Diary, November the 29th, 1941. A dark day today. Frau Wedig brought the sad news that Helmut Wilmensig was killed in action on November the 3rd, near Petersburg. Dr. Müller wrote me that his eldest son had fallen in the east on October the 28th. Henrietta Schneider.
Lunch with de Gaulle at Connaught Hotel. De Gaulle says he doesn't think the Germans will take Moscow. Harold Nicholson, diary. Journal, December the 7th, 1941. I lunched with the President today in the Oval Office. We were talking about things far removed from war when Secretary Knox called to say they had picked up a radio message from Honolulu, from the Commander-in-Chief of our forces there, advising all our stations that an air raid attack was in progress and that it was no drill. I said I thought that surely Japan would not attack in Honolulu. At 2:28, Admiral Stark called the President and confirmed the attack. Churchill rang from England. The President told him that we were now all in the same boat. Harry Hopkins, advisor to President Roosevelt. Roosevelt has ordered the mobilization of American forces. The news makes me feel numb. Harold Nicholson, diary.
We cannot lose the war. We now have an ally that has not been defeated in 3,000 years.
Adolf Hitler to Walter Hevel on December the 8th, 1941.
Diary, Thursday, December the 11th, 1941. Around 3 o'clock, we listened to the Führer from the Reichstag. The war with America is also official now. The Führer will make sure everything turns out well. Henrietta Schneider.
Diary, Ulrich von Hassel, diplomat and member of the German resistance. It's no time for jokes anymore, but stories from the comic character Graf Bobby describe the situation. Graf Bobby looks at the globe and is told the big green region is Russia. The red parts are the British Empire. The light purple is the USA. And the yellow is China, all huge areas. And the little blue one? That's Germany. Does the Führer know how small it is?
When Pearl Harbor converted the issue into a struggle for survival, the United States produced the fighting machine that played an indispensable role in beating Germany to its knees. Dwight D. Eisenhower, Assistant Chief of Staff, U.S. Army.
I experienced how a democracy created a war machine in a few months. Overnight, factory directors and bank managers, civilian technicians, engineers and tradesmen turned into captains and majors, colonels and generals. Julius Deutsch, Austrian Social Democrat in U.S. exile. Memoirs.
December the 12th. I want to join the American Army. Klaus Mann.
When the German army, surprised by the terrible winter of 1941-42, got stuck in the Russian ice and snow, Hitler was frequently depressed. But as before, he hoped for a quick victory.
There is only a very thin veil that we have to penetrate. We have to be patient. The Russian resistance will not hold.
Christa Schröder.
On December the 17th, I visited the generals commanding the 14th and 47th Tank Corps, as well as the 7th Army Corps, to again learn about the condition of the troops. The three generals reported that the troops were beginning to have doubts about the high command. Black ice making all movement difficult. The Russians are prepared and equipped for winter, and we have nothing. Heinz Guderian, Colonel General.
Franz Halder, War Diary, December the 17th, 1941. Midnight, summoned to the Führer.
Disengagement is out of the question. The enemy has only made deep incursions in a few places. Setting up a rear echelon is illusory. The front is suffering in only one respect. The enemy has more soldiers. He has no more artillery. He is much worse off than we are.
Adolf Hitler, oral order to Army Group Center, December the 16th, 1941. Commanders, unit leaders and officers are to take personal steps to force troops to engage in fanatical resistance to hold their position, without regard to enemy breakthroughs on the flank or in the rear. Only with this kind of warfare can we gain the time necessary to get reinforcements from the homeland and the West that I have ordered.
The categorical order not to retreat, combined with Hitler's enormous prestige, but also the terror of his ruling apparatus, have a decisive impact on military performance, with fewer troops and weapons, in stabilizing the German front line and holding the combat effectiveness of the Wehrmacht intact.
Napoleon said in 1812, "The cold has been my ruin." Hitler's determination mastered the situation. His steadfastness warded off doom. Otto Dietrich, head of press of the NSDAP.
Diary, Monday, December the 22nd, 1941. The Führer announces that he has taken over command of the entire army. What are the grounds for this? Dear Müller thanked me for my sympathy about the loss of his son in action. Henrietta Schneider.
The Russians have smashed Hitler's greatest army in the world. Hitler dismisses his generals and takes command himself. Bertolt Brecht, German writer in exile.
Diary, December the 31st, 1941. Bad news from the front. In the evening saw the Führer. Subdued atmosphere. Führer said, "I'm glad to be able to solve large problems. May 1942 bring me as much luck as 1941 has. The worries can stay. Difficult times have always served as preparation for significant events." Listen to Bruckner's Seventh Symphony. Walter Havel.
Diary, January the 11th, 1942. How meek our military communiques have become. Friedrich Kellner, Laubach.
Adolf Hitler. Order for retreat to the East Army, January the 15th, 1942. This is the first time in this war that I will give the order to retreat along a large front position. I expect this retreat to take place in a form worthy of the German army. The troops' feeling of superiority over the enemy and the fanatical will to inflict the maximum damage must also dominate the retreat.
January the 18th and 19th, 1942, near Uranach on the River Tim. Our permanently cold feet hurt. Every step is torture, but we have to walk and move our limbs. Every incidence of frostbite could be interpreted as self-mutilation. Willi Peter Rehse, private.
Karl Töth, stenographer in the Führer headquarters, diary, review of military situation. While we were alone with the Führer, he addressed us. It was very cold in the room, and in his concern for us, he said we must be freezing, and he would therefore have a heater put under our seats. He said he couldn't tolerate the warmth himself. He got a headache when he leant over the maps on the table.
On the 11th of February 1942, Marshal Ion Antonescu visits the Wolfschanze headquarters. The Romanian leader takes part in the daily status report. Insiders refer to these meetings as a show.
During the journey to Hitler's headquarters, I have written the protocols of my discussion in Görlitz Forest and recorded my general impressions. The atmosphere is depressing. Perhaps the atmosphere of the damp forest and the discomfort of communal living in the barracks are contributing to the bad news. The anterooms are full of people smoking, eating and talking away. The smell of the kitchen, uniforms, heavy boots. Everything is for the most part superfluous, at least for a great number of people who don't need to be here. Galeazzo Ciano, Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of Italy, diary.
But the burden of work and increasing concerns from setbacks in the course of the war eroded Hitler's health. From the winter of 1941-1942 onwards, Morel monitored him day and night. In the end, Hitler began having mysterious injections almost every day. Christa Schröder, Hitler's private secretary.
Diary, Berlin, March the 3rd, 1942. The hallmarks of the situation. Further erosion of the German forces in Russia. Slow, further deterioration of the economic and food situations in Germany. Ulrich von Hassel.
Dwight D. Eisenhower, Chief of the War Plans Division of the U.S. General Staff. In the late winter of 1941-42, the U-boat campaign in the Atlantic was at almost the height of its effectiveness. We were monthly losing ships, including valuable tankers, by the score. A typical month was March 1942, when we lost in the Atlantic and Arctic areas 88 Allied and neutral ships. Simultaneously, we needed every type of fighting vessel, cargo, and personnel ship.
Particularly when it comes to the ordinary German woman, the housewife with whom one speaks on the street and in the shops, one gets the feeling that, despite all prohibitions, she continues to keep her own life pretty well intact. Karen Blixen, reporting for the Politiken newspaper, Copenhagen.
In 1941, more than 600,000 soldiers from Italy, Croatia, Slovakia, Romania and Hungary march eastwards with the Wehrmacht. Romania plans to recapture Bessarabia from the Soviet Union, and Hungary wants Hitler's support in the territorial conflicts with its neighbours. Slovakia and Croatia are vassal states of the German Reich.
May the 20th, 1942. We met many of our allies, some of whom made a very good impression. Spaniards, Slovaks, Hungarians. Horst Rochow, letter to his wife.
As the Wehrmacht can no longer offset its losses by recruiting in the Greater German Reich, Hitler urges his allies to provide larger troop contingents. In 1942, troop levels from the Allied states double in the east. The 4th of June 1942. Hitler flies to Finland to congratulate a man he thinks highly of on his birthday.
The Führer speaks out in great praise of Mannerheim. He is a terrific soldier. A shame that this brave nation is so small. Gerhard Engel, Army Adjutant to Hitler.
Field Marshal Kurt Mannerheim, who turns 75 years old today, is known as the Strong Man of Finland, which, as a brother-in-arms, has also been fighting the Soviet Union for 11 months and is supported by German divisions in the country. A recording exists of the talks between Hitler and Mannerheim, taped inadvertently by a Finnish radio technician. Witnesses remember Hitler's voice in a private setting as pleasantly warm. His deep baritone in guttural low Bavarian, the environment of his childhood, is totally different to the screaming shout of the orator Hitler, formed at a time without sound amplification.
Hätte ich im Jahre 39 Frankreich erledigt, dann wäre die Weltgeschichte anders gelaufen. Der 10. Mai war der erste schöne Tag. Am 10. Mai habe ich sofort angegriffen. Ich konnte im September oder Oktober mit unseren Waffen keinen Krieg mehr beginnen, das war ja unmöglich. Wir hatten auch den Aufmarsch im Osten in keiner Weise vorbereitet. Die Verbände mussten ja auch im Westen erst wieder konsolidiert werden. Es musste erst die Bewaffnung in Ordnung gebracht werden.
Mannerheim's Finland will sign a separate ceasefire with the Soviet Union in September 1944.
Diary, Friday, July 4th, 1942. Few clouds, temperature normal, slightly overcast at night. The Russian front breached along a 300-kilometer line. Otto Blumenthal, Utrecht.
After the victory over the Red Army at Kharkov on June the 28th, 1942, Hitler orders a major summer offensive. Due to the weakening of the Wehrmacht in the winter of 1941-42, the attack is limited to an 800-kilometer section in the area of the Army Group South. Hitler wants to conquer the Caucasian oil fields, reach the Caspian Sea, and push across the Caucasus to Persia. An encirclement of large formations of the Red Army, as during the attacks of 1941, fails. The Soviet troops withdraw strategically behind the Don-Volga line. Due to this rapid advance, Hitler gets the impression that the Red Army has lost decisive power. The conquest of the Crimea and advance to the Caucasus mark the greatest extent of Hitler's territorial dominion.
From Rostov-on-Don, several waves of retreats rolled through our area in the summer of 1942. The oil tanks were opened, wheat fields torched, all so that they wouldn't fall into the hands of the enemy. On August 3rd, 1942, German scouts surfaced on motorbikes. Within 3 days, German troops moved into Privolnoye. Soviet troops were scattered. But beyond Nalchik, barrier units worked to carry out Order N227 from Stalin. Not one step back. Mikhail Gorbachev, schoolboy.
July the 12th, 1942. It is becoming increasingly clear that military action will soon take place on the approach to Stalingrad. Alexei Chuyanov, First Secretary of the party's Stalingrad Regional Committee.
War Diary, July the 30th, 1942, day 404. In the bow of the River Don, west of Stalingrad, The 6th Army of Army Group B is engaged in a fierce battle, and the situation is at present unclear. Franz Halder, Chief of the General Staff.
I wanted to come to the Volga, to a specific place and a specific city. Adolf Hitler, November the 8th, 1942.
Kein Schiff mehr die Wolga hoch. Das ist das Entscheidende.
Damn Hitler, who began this war. Damn all the generals, colonels, and military industrialists. Everyone who's to blame for this war and who wants it. A curse on this era. Willi Peter Reza, Corporal.
From Voronezh in the east to the Volga, the Soviet retreat had assumed the character of a disorderly flight. But an army of workers was waiting by the Volga. Curzio Malaparte, the Volga rises in Europe, 1948.
Mother says Father fell on August the 22nd. He volunteered to go to the front. He was sent to Verkhnyi Gniloy, northwest of Stalingrad. He was regimental commander when a shell fragment struck him in the head. He's dead. Ina next to me seems to shrink, as if becoming even smaller and thinner. Peter sobs. Mother doesn't cry. She says this seriously and soberly. Weber von Wedermeyer, born 1932.
On September the 11th, I was ordered to report to the frontline staff under Khrushchev. They told me to take over the 62nd Army. My orders were, defend Stalingrad. After I accepted the order, Nikita Khrushchev asked me, "How do you see this?" I said, "I understand the order very well. I'll try to carry it out. Either I defend Stalingrad or I die doing so." I got in the car and drove to Stalingrad. Vasily Chuikov, Lieutenant General, the Stalingrad Protocols.
The high point of the war had been reached. Something unimaginable overpowered the wildest dreams. The North Cape, Pyrenees, Sahara and Volga formed the boundaries of a sphere of influence created overnight. For sure, there were bigger empires, but this one included Europe and its nations. There was no reason for joy. You knew what lay ahead for us because the disproportion of forces was obvious. Udo from Alvensleben, Army Captain, Diary.
Memories in diary form, October the 18th, 1942. Führer is in high spirits as the Red October tractor plant in Volgograd has been seized. Believes in early capture of all Stalingrad. Gerhard Engel, Army Adjutant to Hitler.
Throwing military forces at the front. But he sensed that it was not a battle for life being fought here, but rather a battle to the death. Vasily Chuikov, the Stalingrad soldier.
I feel entitled to demand that every German soldier should sacrifice his life. Adolf Hitler to Heinz Guderian on December the 20th, 1940.
I have lost more than 4,000 men here. There were people dying, but my men didn't budge. Alexander Rodimtsev, Commander, 13th Guards Rifle Division of the 62nd Army Group.
On October the 26th, 1942, Max is killed. He is a 20-year-old battalion adjutant. It looks as if this is too much for Mother to deal with. She is getting bitter. That's noticeable, even if she doesn't want to show it. We young ones say, now Father is not alone anymore. Verborg von Wedemeyer.
Diary, Sunday, November the 8th, 1942. The Führer spoke from the Munich Hofbräukeller. He laid into the war criminals again. The Americans landed in Algiers during the night. Monday, November the 9th, 1942. Landing of the Americans in Morocco. Henrietta Schneider.
Dr. Theo Morel, Adolf Hitler's personal physician. Diary. December the 15th, 1942. Patient A. Sleeping badly because of the military situation. Profundal.
Through countless channels, the news trickles through about the catastrophic winter in the East. Visitors from every corner of Germany, new arrivals from the prisons, convicted soldiers, government officials on leave, all know and tell of the terror of the Russian Winter War. Rudi Goguel, communist, prisoner in Hamlin jail.
Up until the very end, the soldiers believed Hitler's promise that he would get them out of the encirclement. I knew that this was a terrible lie. Bernd Freitag von Loinghofen, Major.
Diary, Saturday, January the 23rd, 1943. No good news from the fronts. Tripoli abandoned. Henrietta Schneider.
From the west, the Americans marched to the outskirts of Tunis and dug in across from the German positions. It was clear that North Africa could not be held for much longer. Nikolaus von Below, Air Force Adjutant to Adolf Hitler.
Interrogation protocol of prisoner Hermann Strothmann, Lieutenant Adjutant of the 1st Battalion of the 79th Panzer Grenadier Regiment, born 1918 in Münster, Catholic. Men reached the limits of their endurance, and this limit was reached on February the 2nd. We surrendered spontaneously. Around 6 o'clock in the morning, I was told that Russian tanks had arrived. I began to cry, walked out of the shelter, and laid down my weapon.
Diary, February the 4th, 1943. We are now forced to communicate the loss of Stalingrad to the German people. We release the news with correspondingly heroic pomp. I coordinate all the details with the Führer personally, who agrees with my suggestions. Joseph Goebbels.
This news triggered excitement in me that exceeded everything that I'd gone through until then. For me, it was quite clear. The war is decided, the Allies will win. World history will retain its sense. Marie Yalovich Simon, a German Jew hiding in Berlin.
Erich von Manstein, General of the Army. Discussion on February the 6th, 1943. Hitler opened our meeting with the implicit recognition of his sole responsibility for the tragedy of the Sixth Army. I had the impression at the time that this tragedy caused more pain because it not only represented a blatant failure in his leadership, but that the fate of these soldiers really depressed him in a purely human way. Later, of course, doubts prevailed in me as to whether Hitler had ever had a heart for the soldiers.
At what point is one allowed to view the war as lost? As I see it, very late. Albert Speer, the Kranzberg Protocols.
Heinz Linger, valet to Adolf Hitler. Among Hitler's habits, which despite our efforts couldn't be remedied, was that he kept asking what time it was, above all, during the war.
Well, I principally only ever stop at 12:05. Adolf Hitler, in November 1942.